so pleased at the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute to be partnering with SLOS Tech this year at the intersection of tech and good as a member of the coalition here in Birmingham and across our state and region that is trying to drive forward a conversation that's about our collective strength and all the good that we could do together. So I also want to reiterate that while you are here in Birmingham, to take the time, if you have it, through tomorrow to visit us at the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute. Show your badge for the $5 off, or you can go on to bcri.org, put it in SLOS 25, and reserve your time for tomorrow to get that same discount. The powerful history of Birmingham, what took place here in 1963 that changed the world, is quite an inspiring and empowering opportunity for you to think about all the ways that we are trying to change the world today. And before you go back and do all the good that you're doing to build better. So we look forward to seeing you there tomorrow. Let me invite the panel onto the stage with us. First up is Brandon Andrews, CEO of The Inexorable. Kai Frazier, founder of Kai XR. Both of these folks are SLOS Tech veterans. And we'll return Dr. Benjamin to the panel with us. Give her and all our panelists another round of applause. Thank you all for being here today, for partnering with us on continuing this conversation and building on Dr. Benjamin's powerful keynote. I want to start the first question for everyone, and Brandon, we'll start with you. What do you see, boldly imagine, as Dr. Benjamin put it, as the opportunities through equity and not just efficiency to create, protect, and reflect what's good in our communities?
Yeah, I would go directly to Dr. Benjamin's keynote where she said it's not about dismantling broken systems, but about building systems in the right way to begin with. And so if we have the right level of community engagement, if we are bringing in community members, if we are making sure that there's language access, if we're making sure that we're thinking about the ways in which technology is built and will be used in the future, then we can circumvent potentially some of the issues that the movements that Dr. Benjamin outlined are rightfully addressing today.
Thank you for having me. I would say I work in education, and I moved here from Oakland in the Bay Area to Birmingham. In the Bay, the phrase that rules everything is move fast and break things. We're working with students. We don't want to break the students. And that's talking about efficiency, right? So we had to take a different approach, and everything we do is in community. I shouted from the rooftops that none of this tech should be happening unless it has community input. For me in education, I can't tell you how many ed tech products has completely just been made by people in the Bay and no input from the schools. I really believe in the educational trifecta, which is the parent, the teacher, and the student. Rarely are they involved in this. So if I'm thinking about tech for good, especially from my lens of education, it is having the full community come in to have these tech decisions.
Thank you. It's an honor to be in conversation with all of you. I really appreciate this opportunity. I think just underscoring what's been said, in terms of the big picture, I think it involves shifting from a kind of deficit lens of community to what we would call like an asset lens, not what people lack or need, but what they have, the insights, knowledge, experiences, so that we have a much more expansive understanding of expertise and knowledge that's not just born in academia or in certain kinds of credentials and training, but also experience that gives knowledge and that we need is essential to any kind of way forward. So I wanted to share two examples that you guys can dig into on your own time that I think illustrate how to do this, how, not just what, because the process matters as much as the end product. One project is called Brianna's Garden, which is a digital public space that was developed in collaboration with the family of Breonna Taylor, who was killed by Louisville police. And the family worked with technologists and artists to create this augmented reality experience, an app that you can download that's about gently holding grief, but also thinking about organizing and healing so that justice becomes not something just in the courts, but what we do in practice, including on digital spaces. The other project is called Phoenix of Gaza, that was created by and for Palestinians using a 360-degree camera that was smuggled into Gaza before the most recent devastation and captured millions of images that are now available for you to experience in a virtual reality environment. But the point is not kind of like trauma tourism in the way that we've seen many big tech companies employ in other contexts, but it's about having the material, the cultural footage, the architecture as a precedent to be able to return and rebuild the place that is your home. And so again, please go to Gaza XR, learn more about that, bring it to your organization, your community to experience, and also Brianna's Garden, which you can download today before you leave.
Thank you all. I think it's really powerful to think about assets that they have.
Yes.
Kai and I have had this conversation about the communities that are not often asked. And so I want to ask you, Dr. Benjamin, how can we create broader exposure or get them to the table, the communities that are underrepresented, that are under-asked, so that we can shift power and agency to them to tell their own stories? And then Kai, I'd love to hear you share after Dr. Benjamin.
Yeah, I think, as someone who works in the education system, I often hear the solution to many problems is like more education. People need to be educated. They need this, they need that. And that ignores the fact that the education system is the biggest engine of inequality. That is, the more that we are pushed into the system, it actually exacerbates inequalities. And so we can't just say more of this. We have to reconstitute and reimagine what education entails. And so on the ground, what that means for me is actually in educating technologists in the social and historical know-how and knowledge that they need to be able to collaborate in community, to be able to ask the right questions, to be able to counteract the hubris that comes with being told that you have the solution to all the problems. So there are these knowledge hierarchies that are mapped in the university. We know what the so-called hard sciences, soft sciences, humanities, the arts are in the basement. And that hierarchy is mapped onto the real world so that in a company, you might have a resident sociologist, philosopher, historian, but their basement is in the office. Their voice comes at the very end of something rather than at the beginning. So much of this has to think about our starting points. We can't just do business as usual and that tag on some kind of cosmetic change at the end to make it look like it's responsive to community. So really shifting power and knowledge is essential. And I'll give you one quick story on this. When I was a few years ago running through the airport in Newark to some event, I overheard two individuals talking. One man said to the other, "I just want someone to push around, ... And I thought, oh, that's an interesting formulation. And I thought that sentence could end in so many ways. Is it to push around at home, push around at work? But what it made me realize is that for many people, power is top-down power. It's power over. So that even when you want to diversify or bring in people who are not usually in the tech industry, you can't just keep the power dynamics the same and make it more diverse. We have to completely upturn what power is. Power is not only top-down or over, horizontal power, empowerment, where my power doesn't rely on you being stepped on and you being hurt. And so I want to invite us to really rethink our starting assumptions about knowledge and power and then help that guide whatever we're trying to do in the world.
And I'll jump in just as about talking about overlooked communities. One of the communities that from working in Alabama that I think was continually highly overlooked is a lot of the rural communities, especially those communities in the Black Belt. So when we talk about how to include all these different areas throughout Alabama, one of the most basic things that was missing was the connectivity, the broadband, the Wi-Fi access. So we couldn't even have those conversations until we did a lot of work to resolve and make solutions. That could be just having a hotspot. So even when we have our EdTech solution, we can't go there and start to, work with the community. We have to first solve the big, basic level things, which is how can they connect to any of these things? Even if you had the chance, yesterday we had a panel where we did some storytelling with local Birmingham students, and we wanted to see how they could tell their stories. One of the big things that we gave to those kids, some of the kids were as young as 9, basically 3rd to 7th graders, we gave them 360 cameras like we just mentioned, so they could actually tell their own stories and it wouldn't be a one-off. What was so great about that, because when we talk about true community, to pull off that project, we had to, the students were telling a VR experience about the 1963 Children's Crusade. It wasn't just the students. We had the parents, we had the grandparents, we had foot soldiers from the 1963 Children's Crusade. We even had teachers that were all together to make that happen. What happened from just giving them that camera, we had the foot soldier who had never even seen VR, who got to learn about what VR was and has own ideas for how VR could be used. For the parents, we had parents and students who now could share their love for storytelling in new ways, and now it was multi-generational stories they were telling with those cameras and sharing it with the grandparents. And we had teachers that now had a new tool in their toolkits they could use to their students. So all of that together and making sure it wasn't a one-off, even the Black Belt, making sure we can do that and have connectivity, then we start to have that community come together to really make impact that goes far beyond what we could have did yesterday. And I cannot wait to see what both areas create.
Beautiful.
And thank you for those who came to the panel. The kids really appreciate it.
Thank you, Kai. So, in the spirit of collective power, amplifying voices that are not often heard, Brandon, your work uses technology to tap into insights from those communities. So I'm interested in hearing, how does your work help to move organizations from performative inclusion to true accountability and impactful action?
Yeah, it starts with intention, and then it gets into storytelling, and then it gets into the actual movement to action. And I can share a couple of examples. Working with our agency Values Partnerships, I've done casting for ABC Shark Tank for a decade. And it was not only our intention from an agency standpoint, but the show's intention, the production team's intention, to ensure that the audience watching at home is reflected in the entrepreneurs pitching on the show, and also, to the greatest extent possible, the investors investing on the show. So it starts with being intentional, and when you start with that intention, then you can build the KPIs, you can build the accountability structure that's necessary to ensure that you're not only doing a performative measure, but that you're actually delivering positive impact for whatever community that you want to be involved in the work that's being done. 2, I think it's about storytelling. I'll go to this example. Working with Intuit, the global tech company, on an accelerator program called Ideas, where we're engaging small businesses across the country. They get free access to Intuit's AI-powered suite of software tools, QuickBooks, TurboTax, etc. They get a grant and also business coaching. And in looking at the KPIs, looking at the outcomes from the program over the first couple of years, there's an efficiency, there's a cost saving that's there. And we saw that most of the participants were taking that additional time, and yeah, they were using some of it for their business, but a lot of it was being used to spend more time with their family and spend more time with the community. And so now you have this global tech company that has this small business accelerator that's seeing a family and community impact, and is now leaning into, okay, how can we assist these participants not only with building their businesses, but finding more and better ways to support the community work that they want to do, because they now have more time based on being able to go through this program. And so I think it's intention, it's storytelling, and then, as you said, accountability. You have to build in those KPIs to make sure that the moral imperative is not only understood, but the business imperative is understood for making whatever change or moving forward the program. Because at the end of the day, yes, you can spark change with emotion, you can spark change with a significant movement, but the sustainability is going to come from there being that business imperative and making sure that they understand that this is something that's going to be positive for the organization in addition to being positive for the community.
So intention, I love that. not just something that we do in our organizations, not just a business or an outcome measure. So I'd love to hear from all of you, and Brandon, we'll go back to you and just down the line. Like, what should we all be doing personally to amplify the good and support the tech we want in the world? We're often the product, right? We are the users. And success often hinges on how much we engage as communities and as individuals. And so there are decisions that we could be making, perhaps, yes, with our own intention to make sure that we are amplifying the good and supporting the tech we want.
Yeah, I think part of the answer is hidden there in the question. You said amplify the good. Well, start there. Make sure that you are identifying when you see not only technology that's being used for good, not only technology that's having the positive impact, not only technology that's driving positive change, but when you're seeing intentional building of intentionality around building technology, sharing that. So whether that's sharing it individually, whether that's voting with our dollars and supporting those companies that we see, whether those are large or small brands, or for those of us that are investors and have access to resources, ensuring that we're providing those resources to organizations that have that intention. So I think it starts with amplifying that good and that messaging, and then the second piece is really direct engagement. And I'll use this example. Zindi Africa is the largest network of data scientists on the continent of Africa, and there's always this push to yes get Wi-Fi access, yes get basic internet access across the continent of Africa, but also this push to make sure that people are using technology. There's always these positive benefits that are listed or for using a range of technology tools for folks around the world. But many of those tools weren't built by or necessarily for the communities that are being pushed to use them. And so Zindi has been able to build this huge network of data scientists that have the hard tech skills to be able to build at a base level with both startup companies as well as more established enterprise companies as they're working on new tech solutions. And they, through the challenges that they run, are able to build technology that does have that community input, that is relevant to the range of communities that and audiences that may be using it, and ultimately, again, back to Dr. Benjamin's keynote, hopefully avoiding having to fix broken systems versus having systems that are operating in the way that we'd like to see from the beginning. So I think Zindi is a great example of that.
I can give just a very simple, low-level thing I think we should be doing is just talking to each other. We're at a tech conference right now. I would charge everybody, have you had a conversation about what you've learned, how to activate what you've learned today, having ideas, imagination about what could be possible? I can tell you, I rarely have those conversations. I have to pull them out of people. I have them a lot with students, though. Students, they come and say, Miss Kai, wouldn't it be cool and so and so? And I love that. I want to have that with adults. So I would say from all the great things that we've learned today or over the course of Sloss Tech, after we have the gatherings after the conference is over and we have all the fun stuff, talk to each other about what you've learned, what could happen next, what you want to see. And I think the more we start having those conversations, the more we start seeing change. From living and moving from the Bay Area in Oakland, we used to always go to the lake and sit down and talk about what we could do. And that's where a lot of the tech companies came from. Coming together, we would all bring a different offering. I would bring strawberries and where would be grapes. We just sit down on the water and talk to each other. And I think that is so low level. Creating safe spaces for imagination. I think sometimes it's a luxury to be able to dream. Having those spaces where you can dream and reimagine what is possible. And I think more when we become in that type of practice, then we start to see things really change. And that's something everybody can do right now where they are.
I love that. Thank you. Yeah, I guess my parting thought is, going back to the framing of this session, Tech for Good. Again, in the talk, I mentioned that tech for good isn't always going to feel good. And another way to think about it is that we need to embrace the discomfort that comes with really questioning our starting assumptions. And so kind of, getting comfortable with that is that lack of ease when it comes to new information or being challenged in different ways. And so when it comes to intention, which is a word we've heard a couple of times, I actually found that the road to inequity is paved with good intentions. That oftentimes when we rely on our intention to do good and we don't engage in the conversations and build the kind of community and ecosystem that helps us question even our, our desire to do good, then a lot of the problems we face actually are born out of so-called solutions. And so that's something that we need to sort of get familiar with. So I'm going to give you two examples of what I mean. In a prior era, historically, when we looked at the relationship between technology and oppression, it fell into that category of like the obvious spikes. One example of many I could point to is the role of the company IBM in helping to facilitate the Nazi Holocaust by providing the technology, the punch card technology that allowed people to collect data on populations as a precursor to genocide. Is what one author calls a bureaucracy of evil. We think about the Holocaust as the result of a few big bad boogeymen, but really it took an entire bureaucracy of evil, people just clocking in and out, doing their jobs, putting their heads down, not asking any hard questions, not being troublemakers, to help facilitate what we now know to be a mass atrocity. For me, that raises the question, what are the bureaucracies of evil that are operating under our noses today that we are conscripted in, where we're clocking in and out, where we're putting our heads down, not asking any questions, not being troublemakers? And so too often, we're looking for the deadly data, as in the past, but nowadays we still have deadly data, the ICE, for example, Palantir, et cetera. But more often than not, we have what could be called do-gooding data. That is a project, an initiative, a campaign to do good in the world that still adheres to the same old logics wrapped in the veneer of change, the glossy veneer of tech. I'll give you an example out of St. Paul, Minnesota. A few years ago, the school district joined forces with the police department to create what it called the Community Innovation Project. All the right words, right? Community, yay, innovation, woo. Like if you just saw that, you would think that was a good thing. So it's sold to us as something very progressive. But what was this? It was a data sharing platform that was going to collect masses of data on young people in the city in order to predict which youth were going to become future criminals, to create risk scores in order to help them, of course, to intervene early. But when community members got wind of this, all of their critical antenna went off. Dee, 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 dee. And they looked beyond the buzzwords, Community Innovation Project, and they said, hold up. All of the places where you're about to get this data, kids' suspension records, attendance records in school, whether they have family members in child protective services or what we should call the family policing system, whether they have family members in jail or prison, all of this data is drawn from institutions that have never worked in the best interests of our young people. So now why, under the heading of the umbrella of Community Innovation Project, should we trust that the outcome is going to be any different? And so what they did was, over the course of about a year, they gathered after school, community centers, libraries, and not only did they put an end to the Community Innovation Project, saying, let us decide what will work in the best interest of our young people, rather than further stigmatizing them with this risk assessment and score, let us put the resources to actually empower them so that we don't talk about at risk, but we talk about at promise. The potential is fostered. And so the community members in St. Paul are modeling for us not only how to be critical, to say what we don't want, this data sharing platform, but to also invest in what we do want, to say, give us the resources, let us decide what to do with this. So we need that criticality and we need that creativity to go hand in hand, and we need to listen to the knowledge and insight that's born of experience, because an outsider coming in might think, oh, this is a great, quick, efficient way to get something done. But just like the Department of Government Efficiency, that E is better understood as eugenics, a way of continuously ranking and valuing people in the name of efficiency. And so again, learning about the way that this community approached this technology, noticed that it was framed and sold as do-gooding, not deadly, as in the past. And so we need to go beyond good intentions because, again, the road to inequity is often paved with good intentions, and we need to completely upturn the process in which we go about trying to do good in the world.
Can I add one small thing? I know we're almost at time, but to build off of that, living in the Bay, there were so many programs that were promoted to us that were such a badge of honor to be in these programs from these big companies. And when you got closer, you saw what they're taking from you, what data, how you're messing up the further community, what some cells would do if you actually went through this program. And one of the conversations we had on the lake is, what if we all said no to this one company? At that point, we were doing, I still do VR, we were doing a VR company, and by saying yes to this company, we would lose all of our rights to everything we made, and the data would go from the kids to this company. And we all decided, just talking together over a couple weeks in the lake, what if we said no? And then from that conversation, my platform ended up being a distribution platform. So I actually had some of my friends give me their content. And the reason why, all the way to the black belt now, students can look at this content is because we saw a challenge, we sat and talked, we said no, and now that content is being viewed all the way to the black belt with their data not being collected because we talk to each other. So I can't stress how, please do not leave here without having a conversation with somebody and seeing where it can go, and you never know what those no's can add up to be, and you can make your own solution.
I love it. Yes.
Awesome. Thank you all. So let's talk to each other, lift our heads, be creative, be critical, be bold, and do good, y'all.
Yes.
Thank you, Sauce Tech.
Thank you,
Thank you all.
Tech.